Well, my name's Dash and Grizzly. I am on a vacation, so I am chilling at the beach, and I have been for a few days, starting to get a little red, only staying outside for a little while at a time. And I, over the past few days, have gone into the INTJ personality type, which is the architect of the Myers-Briggs Personality Test. And it's one of those that it's got utility as far as personality tests go. It serves a function of how people, more than anything, should occupy their time, their space, their interactions within the workplace. And it's expanded upon friendships, relationships, your strengths and weaknesses, and all that. But more than anything, it's just about how you and other types of people that you could interact with, who you should interact with, who you should stay away from, how you should conduct yourself in a subordinate position, in a managerial position, in a position with other colleagues. And that's all well and good, and that its use throughout the educational system in America is one of the reasons it's become the biggest, the most popular, the most used. But I still have problems with it on a fundamental level. I've just gone swimming, sorry, water. I've said in my previous videos that the Myers-Briggs is a derivative of the Big Five, and it is. It still is useful. I still understand its practical value and its utility being introduced at the level that it's being introduced. But I still run into the problem of, is there even such a thing as a personality type? And it's like, no. It depends on what resolution you want to look at it at, because sure, you can subdivide people to a certain degree, but it becomes more and more difficult to do that with any kind of real precision and accuracy with pinpointing somebody, because you look at things like this and start analyzing it the same way you would a horoscope, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you're an astrological person and you think in terms of astrology and you like reading your daily horoscope, do you, bruh? That's all well and good. Now, it's not to say that the Myers-Briggs is not based off some kind of evidence or observations that can be repeatable and used again. So it's not to that same level of woo nonsense by any stretch of the imagination. It's really not in the same category at all, but it does share the function of omitting information you don't like applied to you, and claiming certain aspects of it that you do find fall directly within your camp. That's, again, not a problem, because we kind of have to do that. You can't turn 16 personalities into 160 personalities and then, pinpoint everybody down, because the exact same thing is going to happen. And there's only so far that you can specify before you fractionate all the way down to the level of the individual. Which, again, is why I like the Big Five, because there is no such thing as a set of information about somebody or a certain personality type and where you score on it, to where it's telling you this is how you are, or take it and leave it. You're gonna do that. There's gonna be no way around it, but it doesn't apply in the same way, because the function of the Big Five is in identification and understanding the values by which you score on any identifying mark, and what kind of things load on which traits. That functionally spans the entire gambit of potential personalities given certain scenarios. You can play with it. It's this very fluid thing where things can even contradict themselves and make sense. You can have hyper conscientious people who are really high in trait orderliness, who do something that seems very unorderly, but like living in a pigsty and enjoying that and not being worried by it, even though their disgust sensitivity is through the roof, saying something like they're anorexia. Because that happens all the time. Some anorexic people I have known, I have lived with, slobs. Contradiction that makes all the sense in the world if you continue to analyze them. So ultimately, that's what I'm trying to tackle in this. My personality type, the architect, INTJ, which basically means introvert. I'm relatively introverted. In intuition, relatively intuitive. Thinking instead of feeling, very thinking. That's like way off the charts. INT judging, relatively, and then assertive, off the charts. 90%. So I mean, that's all well and good. Here's a little image I made of it for a song I did a few years back for the Standard. So, what exactly do I dislike about this? I dislike quite a bit about this, and it's not anything to do with the Myers Briggs, really. It's with people in the same personality type category as I am, and how, oh, masturbatory it is to read this. I imagine so many people who score as an INTJ, A or T, but specifically the A's, because the turbulence are just, they're self-flagellating. They are down on themselves a lot. They don't like having to deal with their emotions. They're not emotionally intelligent. If you believe that emotional intelligence is a thing, I think it's a good verbal way of describing something that can be explained without saying that emotions are a source of intelligence. But the people who score in the T's aren't gonna read the architect about me section, if you will, and think, oh, I'm a genius. I'm the best thing ever. Of course, I wouldn't be friends with those people because I'm brilliant and they're stupid. It says so right here. I'm brilliant. Now that's the exact first thing that comes to mind when you look at the page of weaknesses, and it says arrogance. This is the worst possible thing about the architect personality type, the over exaggeration when it comes to the value metric they place on being intelligent. I hate this about people in general. It doesn't matter what personality type you are, but when you're telling this personality type how wonderful they are, there's barely a single bad thing said about this personality type in this whole thing. I haven't read all the other personality types, but it's like this weird kind of bias towards the architect type. I have no basis in reality for saying that. I have no evidence for it, but oh my god, it's really bothersome to look at. And I have a hard time seeing anything. There's not even like a backhanded compliment. There's not like something good, but a little bit of a bad stinging thing underneath. It's really frustrating to read this because it's just telling people that who are prone to arrogance how brilliant they are. That's bothersome on every conceivable level for me. When I think about all the things that are associated with the architect, the best piece of advice they give is you're at your best when you don't try. That is unbelievably true when you think about the kind of person would fall into the INTJ category. Especially in terms of romance, because they kind of hit the nail on the head saying that these people are clueless in romance because they think of life as a chessboard, a series of strategic elements by which you can move through the world around your peers, playing their strengths as well, playing to their weaknesses and playing to your strengths. And when you do that in an interpersonal romantic relationship, you're just going to come off as manipulative. And that's a problem because you try. And when you don't try and you go about things in a very free-flowing way that doesn't overanalyze them, you have your best shot at succeeding. Now, the exact same thing isn't really true of friendships, but the thing about INTJs, as it says here, they have a filtering mechanism by which they do not allow a large group of acquaintances or public talks about people. These what would you say without being demeaning towards people that do this? Social murmurs, rumor passers, gossipers, worst kind of people to be around for somebody like me, and I imagine any INTJ. I don't care about people, I care about things. More than anything, I care about ideas. And since ideas are like this intangible kind of thing, so like people at the bottom, things in the middle, and ideas at the top, and that's how we sort our friends. Zero chance if you talk about people, some chance if you talk about things, but we're going to be friends if you can talk about abstract ideas. That being said, that's a throwback to a previous video. I'm gonna stop now. I have a hard time reading the kind of shit that's on this list, these strengths and weaknesses, this romantic advice, this interpersonal relationship advice, only to feel like it's just there to it's a self-congratulatory perusing through things where you're just going, I like that, I'm this, I'm that. And this is really my just tirade against intellectual arrogance. I have a friend who calls himself a genius. Let me rephrase that. I know somebody who calls themselves a genius, and everybody thinks they're a genius. They are not. If they ever met a genius, they would be blown out of the water. They would feel useless. They would feel completely immeasurably tiny compared to them. There are plenty of people who are geniuses who are inefficient, who don't find their place in the world and just become embittered that the world just doesn't see their brilliance because they never took any steps to make sure that they were accredited. They were as educated as they are intellectual, as their capacity to learn. They never learned to the same degree that they are capable of learning and didn't get accredited therefore. But sometimes you'll find somebody who works hard, who's far more impressive than a genius is. And this is where my problem comes into play, because there's just such an over exaggerated rotator cuff tearing patting of the back associated with the shit I've seen on this test that it just bothers me to read it and recognize that there are so many people who are going to be walking away from this test far. The Dunning-Kruger effect comes to mind because their confidence is going to be high, and if you're good at something, your confidence should be high. But if you're an INTJ, your confidence should only be high in things that you've had your delusions broken about. The Dunning-Kruger effect. You start something, and within your first 20 hours or 20 hours of real diligent practice, your confidence peaks, and then you have a reality schema-shattering moment where your reality crumbles and you realize that you're absolute dog shit, and then you slowly build back up your confidence until you reach mastery and proficiency around that 5 to 10,000 hour mark, where you've actually put in more effort. Problem is, the INTJs are usually going to be jacks of all trades. They're not going to be the kind of person who's mastered anything really, but the rare few that do in that A category, assertiveness instead of turbulent, and thinking instead of feeling, like hardcore, are going to master a few things. And only really if you master those things should you go about this, I'm so smart, should be speaking as an authority on this. And that's just not going to happen with a lot of INTJs. They get bored. They're goal oriented and all that, but man, you get to keep these motherfuckers on task. So when I see, it's just such a self-fulfilling shitty prophecy where it's like, architects are brilliant. You're an architect. Your worst trait is arrogance. You're brilliant. And you're going to be a jack of all trades because you can't focus long enough to master the things that you're truly interested in. People are going to walk away thinking, okay, they're going to be thinking I'm great at everything when really I'm just a mediocre level of proficiency. It's a bad self-fulfilling prophecy. I can't read this personality trait results without thinking that this is going to make people more confident and less useful, less proficient, and less willing to admit when they're wrong or aren't capable of doing something. And you're going to have people doing things like entering entrepreneurial fields and failing at a higher rate than is within the general population. It seems to be focusing on all the wrong things and causing what, if I take it to the logical conclusion in my brain, it's just this snowball of bad potentiality running downhill and just gathering momentum, gathering confidence, and there's a bottom. Jesus, that's my real problem with this. I don't have all that much against the Myers-Briggs. There is utility in it, and I can understand that. I can recognize the value of it. As far as my personality type, if such a thing exists, goes, I have qualms with it. I have a tremendous dislike for arrogance, especially in terms of unearned intellectual arrogance that is really pushed by that Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't care if you're arrogant. I care if you're like ungodly confident in your arrogance. And that's all this is going to do. The vast majority of people who read that are going to get a confidence boost, an arrogance boost, and a self-awareness dip. And the self-awareness dip is going to be bigger than the confidence boost and the arrogance boost. It's going to make them think they're more proficient than they are. It's going to make them think they're more talented than they are, that they're more goal-oriented than they are. And furthermore, that they're right in their assumption that the reasons people don't like them is because those people are stupid. Or the reasons that a relationship didn't work out is because emotions are dumb. Everything that could be wrong with this personality trait in terms of what you would tell these people in terms of their personality trait, it just seems like a terrible... The logical conclusion is terrible. It's the kind of thing that makes me think if somebody was an INTJ, I would say, never take the Myers-Briggs test. You will be worse off for it. And I so rarely think that about, like, understanding yourself. Oh, I don't mean that as a promo for the site that I would recommend. I mean, if I tell somebody to understand themselves, 99 times out of 100, I think that's better for them. But in terms of the Myers-Briggs personality type and the INTJ, I don't think you're better off. I think it takes somebody who can really disconnect, be skeptical about what they're reading, and skeptical about their own ideas to say, this is bad. This is not good. So if you're gonna be an architect, I wouldn't recommend reading anything about architects. There's very few instances where I could say that learning about yourself could make you worse. So, that's all. That's my real beef with it. My name is Dash and Grizzly. You can find me on youtube.com/DashingGrizzly, Twitter, DashingGrizzly. Go to fingerbrain.com. Podcasts coming out more and more. Got some people lined up. Got some personality configurations in the back of my mind. Raskolnikov, that's a big one. I got pre-murder and post-murder set up. Hermione Granger, fantastic. A lot of ideas about how I can go about that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. My name is Dash and Grizzly. Oh, I'm done. That was a rant. That was a rant. Yes, it was.